Hello, fellow translators. So, this should be an interesting one. First of all, I should say I'm sorry for not having made a video in a while. And I'll have a video with an update where I talk about what's going on in general soon. But for now, I just wanted to cover this. As some of you, many of you, I guess some of you might know, I recently spoke at a conference, the Conference for the New Zealand Society of Translators and Interpreters, their annual conference. And I gave a talk called Freelance Translators. You can translate, but can you freelance? Now, I'm not going to go through that presentation mainly because people paid for it, and so I'm not going to recreate it here. But what I did want to do is during the conference, people asked questions that I tried to get to, but I wasn't able to get to all of them. And they were kind enough to send me those questions after the conference so I could, reply to them if I wanted in my own time. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to let you see what I answered to those questions because I think they're going to be quite relevant. As you can see, the talk was about freelance translation, about the freelance part of freelance translation and working from home as freelance translators. So I think this pertains to all of you as freelance translators and how to go about it. So let's get to the questions right away. So here we go. Here are the questions. I took out the identifying data of the people asking the questions, except for here, Auckland branch, because that's not really identifying. But I wanted to do that because obviously I don't want to share people's names and whatnot. But let's get to them in order, I guess. We can go through from the beginning and go to the end. That makes sense. So the first question here, will he make the slides available? Yes, he will. Yes, these slides were made available to the people who attended. That doesn't really pertain to you guys. But let's go here. Do you have a feel for how much the expected format of a resume varies between countries and cultures and how much we should aim for specific recipients? So here I was talking about the resume, your CV as a freelancer, and how it's different when you're a freelancer as compared to when you're working in-house, when you're working as an employee, because it fulfills different criteria, right? When you're an employee, you have to make sure that you're a good fit for the company, that you can grow with the company, that you'll be a good colleague, but also a good employee, a good manager maybe, and whatnot. You need to fit the company culture. You need to be a good person that people want to hang out with as well as work with. However, when you're working as a freelancer, this isn't the case. When you're working as a freelancer, you just basically need to handle the job at hand, and that's it. So I went through some of the differences and how your resume should be structured to reflect these differences. And so that's what this question and a couple of these questions will pertain to. So once again, do you have a feel for how much the expected format of a resume varies between countries and cultures and how much we should aim for specific recipients? So I did talk about this briefly because I mentioned that the resumes can be different depending on the ones I'm most familiar with, let's say, are Europe and the US. I know in Europe, resumes can be several pages and they can include a photo. While in the United States, they never include a photo and usually they're quite short, 1 to 2 pages. My recommendation here is to keep it to 1 to 2 pages and to keep it short. And the main reason is that people, and frankly, this doesn't have to do with different cultures and whatnot, but more because of the fact that you're a freelancer. And when you're a freelancer, and I go into this more in detail in the actual webinar, but when you're a freelancer, people are going to go through your resumes in a very different manner. And in my experience, the first time they go through your resume is extremely quickly because for every job, they're going to receive tons of resumes. And the first thing they're going to want to do is try to weed out any resume they can. They're looking for excuses to get rid of your resume. And quite frankly, having a long resume with a lot of stuff that maybe doesn't really pertain to the job could be a good excuse to get rid of it. So that's why I recommend keeping it short, 1 to 2 pages usually. And I think this is valid no matter which country or culture you're dealing with. And so I would recommend making sure that everything you state in your resume pertains to the job at hand and that you keep it between 1 and 2 pages, depending, what works best for you. And this is just so that you can make sure they're able to look through all of your resume and see all the pertinent points very quickly, rather than going through 7, 8 pages where a bunch of the stuff maybe doesn't really pertain to the exact job at hand. So yeah, that's basically my thoughts. Let's go to the next one. I've heard other presenters on this topic say that a photo is a good idea because this is more of a marketing tool than a strict resume. What are your thoughts on that? So I did mention, I did cover this briefly, I guess after they asked the question maybe, I'm not sure. Because what I said was I do not think you should have a photo on your resume for a couple reasons. First of all, I think it takes space. If you're having a resume that's just 1 or 2 pages, a photo takes space and can take up valuable real estate that can be covered by other stuff. Second of all, if people are in the US and some other places, they don't want a photo, you know, and they cannot ask for a photo and it's not part of their structure for resumes. And the third reason is also a lot of people still print out resumes and photos don't come out very well when you do that. And so for all those reasons, I recommend not having a photo on your resume. However, I do recommend having a photo on your online profiles, whether it be pros.com, Translators Cafe, Upwork, LinkedIn, what have you. I recommend having a photo there because a photo does help to show transparency and honesty. Like it puts a face behind the name and it makes people that much more likely to trust you. Since they're hiring you online, they cannot meet you face to face. Putting a photo there really does help. So in brief, that's it. I recommend in general not to have it on the resume, but to have it on your online profile. So down here, in the same vein as B's question, I've heard people say for freelancers that you can actually remove the years you completed different jobs, experience, university studies, etc., because it's more of a business proposal than a traditional CV and resume. So yes and no. My issue here is that yes, the resume does fulfill a different purpose when you're a freelancer as opposed to when you're getting a normal job as an employee, or an in-house job as an employee, I should say. However, it still should be very recognizable as a resume. If it starts looking like just a list of jobs and bullet points or something different, people are going to get iffy, especially a project manager or someone who's going through many different resumes, and you'd be amazed at the low quality of certain resumes, and some people really do just put bullet points and they call it a resume. And so you run the risk that they think you're one of those people and that you just don't know how to structure a resume, and they might just decide to delete your resume and not deal with it anymore. Like I said, the first time they go through resumes, very often they're just looking for excuses to get rid of these resumes. So I do recommend keeping the years you completed different jobs or experience, at least for the main ones, like for in-house jobs, jobs that lasted several years, for university studies, etc. Keep the years there, just like a standard resume. If you have other freelance jobs and whatnot, you don't have to do the particular jobs. You can just say you're a freelance translator but I would still keep the year there, just so that it's structured and very recognizable as a resume from the get-go. So the next question, is it actually worth saying Windows operating system, Microsoft Office? Isn't this obvious? So once again, this is for the resume. This is at the bottom of the resume. I recommend putting your computer skills, your IT skills, and I do think it's worth putting this. Obviously, if you have better skills, you can leave out Windows OS, but I do think you should include any IT skills you have. The reason for this is that when people are hiring you online, they might not consciously be thinking so, but the fact is, they need to know that you know what you're doing online with a computer, because chances are all of your communication is going to be online. They're going to be sending you the job online. You're going to be sending the completed job back. You might have to use their program and their platform to send this stuff back and forth. Payment will be occurring online. So they kind of need to know that you know what you're doing online. And so having a computer skills section, even if it has obvious things like Windows OS, is better than nothing. So if that's all you have, then yeah, at least put something. If you have better stuff, obviously you can take out Windows OS or whatever it is, Microsoft Office. But if you don't have anything better, you know, then add Windows operating system, Apple iOS, Microsoft Office. You can even specify Microsoft, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and I don't know, Photoshop, stuff like that. Just whatever you know how to do on the computer, because at least it shows you have some IT skills. Chances are they won't really read through them, and that's why I also say just to put it at the end of the resume. But having a section with computer skills at least will put their mind at ease. Probably not even consciously, like I said, but just subconsciously it'll help. So what if you are an entry-level freelance translator and have only done 1 or 2 translation jobs? Would it be okay to include language teaching jobs in professional development section? Here, I'm going to delete the ones I've already covered because there's no reason to keep it confusing. So if you're an entry-level freelancer and you've only done 1 or 2 translation jobs, then yes, absolutely. Any job that pertains to languages can help. So language teaching, yes, it shows that you kind of know the structure of the language well enough to teach it, right? And if you've done interpreting jobs, these won't hurt either. If you've also just done writing in your native tongue, that can also help. So things that are not strictly translation, but sort of pertain to it can also help. Another thing that helps a lot is jobs in your specialization. If you're a legal translator and you've had a job as a paralegal or working as a law firm or at a law firm or something like that, absolutely include that because it shows that you know your specialization. So yes, that's pretty much my answer. Let's go to the next one. As an interpreter, providing examples of your work is not easy. What are some ways around it? What information will be important to include in your CV? So I remember this question actually. I'm not an interpreter and I never have been. So this is kind of difficult for me. I don't know because being a translator, it's easy to provide examples of your work. Pros.com has a section where you have a portfolio where you can show what you've done, the source text to the target text, the text you've translated, and usually that's what you can send out. As an interpreter, yeah, it's more difficult. So I don't have a good answer to this, and I apologize, but I'm not an interpreter, and so I would defer to someone who is an interpreter and ask them how to go about it because I don't want to start giving out the wrong information. Do you recommend putting most effort in terms of social media into LinkedIn above other platforms? Yes, I do. And I've mentioned it here on this channel as well. But LinkedIn is social media, but it's also a professional place. And when you're looking for a job, I think it's the best place to go. When people are on Facebook, they're kind of there to, catch up with friends and see what's going on with them. When they're on Instagram, they're looking at pictures. On Twitter, they're doing whatever they're doing on Twitter, so they go on these different platforms for different reasons, right? No one's gonna go, people don't usually go on TikTok to search for jobs or to hire someone. So that's why I think LinkedIn should be given the most effort. Having said that, you might as well put your, put the fact that you are a translator on all of your social media because you never know where someone's gonna find you, right? So you can add that to your profile for all your social media, but I would concentrate most of your efforts on LinkedIn, yes. Could you give us a few more examples of strongest points, please, or ideas of what not to put? I'm not sure what this pertains to. I guess for your resume, your strongest points, I did mention something in your resume. It seems like all these questions have to do with the resume. I guess that's the section that resonated the most. Anyway, or not all of them, but most of them. So the strongest points in the resume, and what I mentioned was that you should put your strongest points up top on your resume. And a few examples of these would be big companies you work for. So any recognizable name, big company, a big organization that you work for, even if it was as a volunteer, if you went to a famous school, so anything like that. So if you worked for Facebook or Google, if you went to Harvard, if you worked for the UN or Translators Without Borders or something like that, then you can put that up top. And I kind of recommend in my structure, I kind of put it as a title, and I just say, and basically I have it as a title, and very, I say whatever translator, and degree in computer science, or study, or MBA from Harvard, or UN worker, worked at the UN, or whatever it is. So, by the way, I offer a course on how to have a CV as a freelancer as well, and where I cover I cover all this material. In fact, I go more in detail than I did in the webinar, and that's on my Thinkific page, which is linked down below. But yeah, I thought I should mention that as well, in case you do want to go into more detail. So those are some examples of strongest points, ideas of what not to put in. It's like I said, anything that doesn't pertain to the job at hand, I would take it out. If you taught snowboarding, take that out. There's no reason to do it. Don't worry about blanks in your resume, about spaces in your resume, because it doesn't matter when you're a freelancer. What do you do if the private client doesn't pay after 1 month? Do you give a discount? Well, no. Oh, wait. It continues here. On a compassion ground, she has just lost her father in Japan. Okay, this seems like a very specific point. And so this is a judgment call. If you know this person and you know that this person just lost their father and it affects, you know, her business, and I guess it's just her or it's a small business, and so you know the fact that she can't make it or she's in mourning, you know, will affect the business. And be open-minded enough to work with them. On the other hand, you have to be conscious of the fact that you also have to pay rent. You know, you also have to have food on the table to eat and whatnot. And so, absolutely be compassionate. But I would, in fact, I wouldn't give a discount. Maybe I'd give them more time to pay, or I would say, "Oh, you only need to pay me half now if you have a problem with cash flow or a problem with accounting or something, or if there are delays." But I don't see how a discount would help in this sense. Like I could see if she's in mourning, then maybe there would be a delay because of that. But I don't see why there should be a discount. But like I said, this is a judgment call, so just see on a case by case basis. But be very conscious about the fact, once again, that you do have to pay rent and you do need to receive your money. Do you recommend LinkedIn Premium? So I did mention this as well in the later on in the talk. Do I recommend LinkedIn Premium? LinkedIn Premium, which is Sales Navigator, basically, you can get a free month. So yeah, try out for the free month and then see if it's worth it for you. Otherwise, you pay, I think it's $70 something per month, and you know, so try it out for free for that first month and try out. Make sure while you're trying it out that you try out all the options it has. It has different search options. It has different contact options. It has a bunch of stuff. You can look them up. And so give it a good try for that month and see what you can get out of it, if it's worth it. And then you'll be the best judge of whether it's worth keeping or not. But yeah, try that free month, definitely. How do we protect ourselves in the complicated U.S. legal system when working there, when looking for work there? This is a big, huge question. So, I mean, yeah, this depends. If you're looking for a freelance job in the U.S. with a company in the U.S., they need to worry about it more than you, quite frankly. And so what happens is, in fact, a lot of companies do not want to hire freelancers who live in the U.S., especially places like California, because they've changed a lot of the tax laws, and so that can be a pain. But if you are outside the U.S. and you want to work for a company within the U.S., as far as I know, you don't need to worry too much about it. Like the company hiring you needs to worry about it, but you just need to do your job, you know, and then you worry about your taxes wherever you live. They might ask you to fill out a form or two for their own needs. And this, look, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, and so I'm just speaking based on my experience. But based on my experience, you know, see what they ask you to sign. Feel free to Google search it and look it up to make sure it makes sense. But you know, that's pretty much all that happens in my experience again. So I could very easily be proven wrong. So maybe find other people who you know who are working with companies in the U.S. and confirm that. But that's my experience, at least. What do you look for in a translator to build a long-term relationship and keep them in your mind so they don't get lost in the crowd? Well, where do I start? Look, the main way that I build a long-term relationship and keep them in my mind is if they've done work for me and I've been very happy. If I'm happy with the work you've done for me, then I absolutely keep your name. In fact, I have a list where I keep the translators that I like for the different specializations and language combinations. And you're going on that list. If I worked well with you, then absolutely I'm keeping you there. To keep in my mind when I'm not working with you, like if I haven't been able to hire you yet, then yeah, interaction on LinkedIn definitely helps. That, you know, to keep me top of mind. People that I interact with often on LinkedIn, commenting back and forth and whatnot, you know, they're the first people that pop to mind, quite frankly. Having said that, I do ask people to fill out the form on my website. And if you filled it out with the correct language combination specialization, the next time I have an opportunity in that particular language combination specialization, I'll probably be sending you a message. So, and most companies, by the way, pretty much all companies, I think, have a form online to fill out, and that's their preferred method, just because it's so much easier than later when they need someone in that particular combination to, you know, access their database. And so that's why I always recommend filling out the form rather than, you know, sending cold emails and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you found this information useful. Even though you couldn't get the presentation itself, I think a lot of this was self-explanatory, and so you do find it useful. And if any of you are people who did ask the questions, then hopefully this answered those questions as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And like I mentioned, I have, so what I have is actually, I have, I think, a copy of my webinar available for sale as well. I can't remember if it's the webinar that I did for the New Zealand Association or for the Carolina Association of Translators and Interpreters. These were two different variations of the same material though, so it shouldn't matter too much for you guys. But I do have that available, and I also have a course specifically on CVs, resumes for freelancers and entrepreneurs, people working online, people working remotely, and that deals specifically with those differences, and not only how to structure your resume, but how to use your resume then for finding a job, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and all of that you can find in the link down in the description below, below this video. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully you found this useful, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye. Savedum.